At 4:12 a.m. on December 14, 1944, the Belgian village of Wiltz was a frozen graveyard of blackened stone and shattered glass. Inside the hollowed-out remains of a clock tower, Oberleutnant Hans Vogel stood in the shadows, his breath blooming in the frigid air like a ghost. He adjusted the collar of his wool greatcoat and checked the action on his MP40. He felt invincible. His platoon held the high ground, and his veteran snipers had spent the last 72 hours turning the village square into a dead zone, where even a scurrying rat was met with a lethal Mauser round. Vogel checked his watch. He believed the Americans were broken, cowering in their foxholes waiting for the inevitable surrender. He was wrong. In the next 90 seconds, Vogel and 21 of his elite grenadiers would be dead. While the German officers scanned the square for movement, Private Elias Thorne was crouched in a narrow, ice-slicked drainage pipe less than 200 yards away. His knees were buried in freezing slush, and the smell of sulfur and wet iron filled his lungs. He wasn't checking his ammunition. He was carefully winding a rusted clock spring he'd pulled from a child's toy. This act of childish defiance flipped infantry doctrine on its head. It was a maneuver explicitly forbidden by his commanding officer, a violation of every tactical manual ever written at West Point. But within minutes, the Toymaker's windup would prove more efficient than a full artillery barrage. Before the draft board snatched him from his quiet life, Elias Thorne lived in the back of a cluttered workshop in Steubenville, Ohio. He was a man of fine margins and hidden tensions. He understood the physics of play, how to balance a brass gear so perfectly that a single ounce of tension could move a lead soldier across a wooden stage with an uncanny human-like gait. He spent his days repairing escapement mechanisms and winding mainsprings, learning that the most powerful force in the world wasn't a hammer, but a perfectly timed release of energy. When he enlisted, the Army didn't see a genius. They saw a scrawny, distracted recruit who was too slow on the obstacle course and obsessed with the wrong things. During basic training, his instructors were baffled by his unorthodox habit of stripping down his equipment not to clean it, but to improve the tension of the springs. They mocked his civilian logic, calling him Geppetto, and dismissed his suggestions on how to use sound and movement to mask in advance. To the rigid military mind, war was about firepower. To Thorne, war was about the anatomy of a distraction. The tactical problem was a fortified cellar on the eastern edge of the square. It was an untouchable position, protected by 3 feet of reinforced concrete and an overlapping field of fire from 2 MG-42s. Standard Army doctrine dictated a frontal assault with smoke and suppressive fire. It had already become a massacre. The casualty list was a testament to the failure of the official way. Corporal Thomas Miller, age 22, from Des Moines. He died 5 yards from the cellar door, leaving behind a 6-year-old daughter who would keep his last mud-stained letter in his shoebox for the next 60 years. Private First Class Anthony Gianelli, 19, from Brooklyn, a former track star who was cut down mid-stride, still clutching a high school medal for luck. Despite the growing pile of dog tags, Captain Sterling, his uniform crisp and his boots polished by an orderly, refused to listen. "We follow the manual, Thorne," Sterling had barked, his voice echoing in the command tent. "We don't play games with scrap metal and tin cans. You will participate in the dawn assault, or you'll face a court-martial for cowardice and unauthorized field modifications." Thorne didn't listen. While Sterling studied his maps, Thorne studied the enemy. He noticed a tiny flaw the strategists missed. The German sentries weren't just watching for shapes, they were listening for the rhythm of American movement. They were keyed in to the specific sound of a GI's boot drogging in the gravel or the metallic clink of a mess kit, sounds that triggered a subconscious Pavlovian fire response in a bored sniper. Thorne went rogue. He spent the night scavenging in the ruins of a toy shop and a hardware store, gathering springs, piano wire, and empty ration cans. He constructed 3 wind-up ghosts. These were crude, mechanical decoys designed to drag weighted boots across a floor and rattle debris in a pattern that mimicked a squad moving into flanking positions. He prepared for the mission alone, in total secrecy. He had no backup, no radio support, and no official blessing. He was betting his life on the geometry of war. calculating the exact angle at which sound would bounce off the stone walls to create the illusion of a full company. The air inside the drainage pipe smelled of fermented corn and old death. Thorne crawled to the edge of the kill zone. His hands shook, but his mind remained focused on the numbers. He set the first decoy 14 inches off the ground, angled at 43 degrees downward to ensure the sound of the boots would echo through the stone corridor and toward Vogel's tower. He calculated the tension. The spring would run for exactly 80 seconds. He wound the key. The metal bit into his thumb. Click, click, click. Thorne retreated to a hidden nook behind a collapsed well, exactly 480 yards from the German position. He checked his spring field. He exhaled halfway, held, squeezed. He didn't fire at the Germans. He fired a single shot into a pile of bricks near his decoy. The Germans woke up. The decoys sprang to life. Scritch, clank, thump, thump. From the clock tower, Vogel saw shadows flickering in the mist. He heard the rhythmic dragging of leather on stone. He heard the Ammies moving into the square. Feuer! Vogel screamed, his professional training taking over. The Germans leaned out of their reinforced covers, exposing their chests and heads to the square to rake the squad with lead. They were emptying their magazines into tin cans and clock springs. Thorne worked the bolt. The spring field kicked into his shoulder. Short, punchy sentences of lead. The first shot took Vogel through the neck. The second dropped the assistant gunner, Gefreiter Kraus. The third silenced the MG-42. Thorne fired with the mechanical precision of the clocks he used to fix. He picked them off as they scrambled in the open, trying to kill a ghost that wouldn't stop rattling. 22 men emerged from safety to find the intruders. 22 men fell before they realized the square was empty. By 6 a.m., Wiltz was secure. The untouchable position had been cleared without a single American life lost in the fourth wave. Thorne had neutralized 22 enemy targets and silenced a major strongpoint using nothing but civilian logic and discarded junk. In the aftermath, the Army intelligence officers marveled at the psychological breakthrough. Years later, the technique of acoustic deception would be written into the official doctrine taught to Special Forces units as a sophisticated tactical maneuver. But Thorne's name was never in those books. His reprimand for unauthorized modifications remained on his record, and he was never awarded a medal for the lives he saved that night. When the war ended, Elias Thorne didn't go to the parades. He went back to Steubenville. He put his uniform in a cedar chest and never spoke of the night he played a deadly game of wind-up. He had a workshop to run. He had customers waiting for their watches to be timed. He went back to the quiet world of gears and springs, where the only thing that mattered was that the movement stayed true. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.